Welcome to Gardening Utah. I'm your host, Jana Francis. Today, we're joined by Mike Lorenc, the lead horticulturist at Conservation Garden Park in West Jordan. Mike has been helping Utahns garden more sustainably for over 15 years, and you may remember him from episode 54 of the show. So in this episode, he's bringing the kind of practical, myth-busting advice that makes a real difference in our yards. We will be talking about smart irrigation, how to actually save water without sacrificing your plants. We go over why soil testing beats guesswork every single time. And we myth bust the truth about landscape fabric. And spoiler alert, it's not good. Plus, Mike shares with us what he's planting in his own local scape at home. And we geek out over flowers and plants and have so much fun talking about all of his favorite things that he's putting in his yard. And we talk about his tips for choosing the right plants and trees for Utah's unique climate. We have a lot of fun in this show, and it is an info-packed episode that you don't want to miss. So let's dig in with Mike right now. Well, Mike, thanks so much for being on the show. I know you've been on the show a couple times before. I'm excited to get caught up and have you back. You guys are just over in West Jordan, right?
Yep, we'll open till 8:30 Monday through Saturday. We're free to get into. Anybody can come by anytime. And if you have questions, we're around. You can ask, or you can ask the front desk your question, and sometimes they'll come and get us. So
amazing. Okay, so as I mentioned, you've been on the show before, so our listeners are well aware of who you are. But we have a lot of new listeners this year as well. So I did just intro you a little bit, but tell us a little bit about the Conservation Garden Park and what's going on over there right now. Because I've seen your awesome Instagram lives, and you're giving some good info there too.
Yeah, though that was something new this year that we started doing on Wednesdays at noon. We thought figure people can maybe watch us at lunchtime doing kind of what we're doing. And usually the Instagram lives are just kind of we're doing what we were planning on doing anyway during that time period. We've talked a little bit about what's blooming in the garden. We'll just kind of keep doing this and taking questions because it's a good forum for people to send questions our way. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun job actually. This is my 15th season here. So
wow,
yeah, I've been here a minute.
Incredible.
So,
and then I bet when you get home, you're like, ooh, yeah, not going to work in the yard.
It absolutely is a thing. I get home and fortunately my partner likes to go out and work in the yard, and she'll let me instruct her almost like I do one of the gardeners here. And then I'll go back in and I'm like, I need to rest. So yeah, so she handles a lot of that stuff at home gratefully. So shout out to Jen. So,
oh, that's awesome. You're like, I am definitely not pruning another tree today.
Yep. That has definitely happened. So
yeah, for sure. But I know that irrigation is really your favorite thing to speak about. So why don't you give our listeners, some of the real practical tips?
So for my money, when it comes to water conservation, years have taught me that it doesn't matter how many water-wise plants you install. If we're not watering it right, then we're just overwatering plants that don't need it. So irrigation is probably the single biggest thing you can do and change and do differently to save water. Now, the first thing you can do, anybody can do this no matter what their situation is they can just wait to water. They can just not turn it on until it gets hot. We don't suggest turning on water until Mother's Day. In fact, stressed grass just grows deeper roots looking for more water, which creates a better, more resilient lawn. So underwatering your lawn or watering it less actually helps it save water. And this is something anybody can do. Wait to water and just start watering a little less with what you have. And you don't have to change anything other than your own habits for that one. So we can all do that one. But if you were to come out here, we do teach classes out here on irrigation. In fact, I'm not sure what's under the soil, what's under the dirt. So we try to help clarify that a little bit for them, or at least what they need to know on it. So, but yeah, watering is probably that biggest deal. We think, we're not anti-lawn. We're not saying don't have any lawn at your house. Although I'm doing my own project in my house, I will not have any lawn when I'm done. That's just me though. But shrink your lawn size. Water the grass properly. Drip can go pretty much anywhere else. I use a drip everywhere in this garden. And like, hopefully someday we can put it under the lawn and see how that works, because I'm really dying to try that. So, yeah, putting the drip is really good. But here's a couple of things you'll need to know if you're going to put a drip system in your lawn. Okay.
Okay.
You should probably know your soil type. Okay? In fact, I would say it's the most important thing to know if you're going to install pretty much any irrigation, but definitely if you're going to put in a drip system. The reason for this is water moves differently through different types of soil. So if you have sandier soil, it moves differently than if you have more clay soil. Okay, so this affects how the drip you're going to put in, how far apart your emitters are, or how much water is coming out every single emitter. So, and that's really the most important thing. The line I like to get off here is we don't water plants. We water soil. Plants will take the water out of the soil. We're not actually watering the plants. We're actually watering the soil. So how we water the soil changes depending on what that soil is. So that is your biggest consideration when watering something, especially with a drip system, is what is your soil. So
I love that. We water soil, not plants.
Right. We water soil. We don't water plants, not technically speaking.
Yeah,
So,
you're right. That's
yeah.
so true.
And once you kind of think about it that way, it actually does start to like make more sense as to why we do some of the things we do.
Yeah.
We're trying to put water in the soil evenly across an area so that plants can take out water evenly across where their roots are, and actually encouraging their roots to keep going outward. So plants don't really do a lot of like searching for water. Their roots don't go where there isn't any. Okay, so you put water where you want the roots to keep going, to encourage the roots to follow that. So you do have to put a little water around the plant to encourage those roots to keep moving. This is especially true with trees. Okay, the most important area on your tree to get water is that area right around what we call the drip line. And it's that area right where like the water would be dripping off, and you no longer get like if you stand under and you get protection from the rain. It's that spot right where you wouldn't be getting that protection anymore. It's just kind of coming off the edge. So that is the most important place on a tree to water. Okay, so if you're watering a tree and you want that tree to be healthy, you want to water right about that line, and then a little bit out, and then a little bit in. And those are the most important watering roots of a tree. So,
okay. So if it's a brand new tree that you just planted, then would you say to run a drip around the root ball, or just like an inch or two out?
So I would say the proper way to do this would be both of those things. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to kind of get an idea of how big that tree is going to get in a few years, and then put the water out there as well. So if your tree is going to get 10 feet in 10 years, wide, I mean, maybe you're putting your drip out at like the 5 feet mark, so that in 5 years, the water's kind of already waiting for it out there, but you're watering right around that root ball, because that's where those roots are going to be. When I say root ball, I mean, definitely spend some time tearing up that root ball a little bit and making sure you take care of the circling roots in that. But and then you'll want to water right around where the roots are, and then a little out from that. And then you want to ultimately set up that irrigation, that drip, out to where a more mature size would be, so that it's definitely got that water as it gets bigger. So
that makes so much sense.
What we use out here is what we call inline drip. Okay? And I use this a lot, and I've used the other drip, which is called point source. So point source drip is those little tubes that run up and down, and then you put in the smaller tubes, those little thin, spaghetti type tubes, and then you run those out to the plant, and you go, okay, you pin those out the plant. That is the type I don't use it. And in fact, I've come to believe that's just not a good way to do it anymore. The reason is this is unfortunately the drip I think most people are actually familiar with. When you say drip, I think that's what they think of. And so I do spend some time trying to talk them out of that for a bit. But the problem with that is, let's say you plant a tree and you've put 4 emitters around there, which actually is more than I think a lot of people do. You'll need to put some back from there. And as the tree gets bigger, you actually have to remove those and keep moving them outward. Where, say, an inline system where the emitters are actually built into the tubing, and so they come at designated flows per hour or designated distance apart. So you will kind of know that before you go buy it. We're putting those in like a grid pattern, so it's already got the water where the plant needs it, and you're not moving or adding drip emitters, because as a tree gets bigger, like on a point source system, for instance, you'd have to keep adding emitters to that tree as the roots got bigger, and then you'd have to keep moving them out.
Uh-huh.
And rarely do I see rarely do I see that in practice, because I think contractors set this kind of thing up and then don't tell homeowners how they need to, run it later.
Right.
Because after that, they're gone and you're left not knowing what to do with it. And a lot of people just didn't know they had to do that. Now, out here at Conservation Garden Park, I can tell you our soil is pretty clay. We're really low in the valley. We're not far from the Jordan River, so we're really low in the valley. And when you get that low in the valley, you do get very clay soils.
Yes.
Okay, so our emitters are very far apart. They're about 18 inches apart. And our flow per emitter is something like 0.4 per hour, 0.4 gallons per hour. Okay. And so that's putting out very slow, and they're very separated, because clay soil, what we can expect from that is will absorb slowly into the soil. It will spread laterally more than it will go deep, and then it will stay in the soil for a lot longer. Okay, so this affects everything about how we're watering. Okay, so we're going to want to water deeply. So we'll run our system about a half an inch, which for this system is about 75 minutes. And then we might not run it for another 10 days to 2 weeks, because that water does not come out of that soil very quickly. And our emitters are 18 inches apart, because we can actually expect that water to move laterally like 9 or 10 inches in all directions. And so this helps us get really even watering on there. Now, clay would, that's clay. Sand would be different. Loamy soil would be different. This is why knowing what that soil type is actually a really good way. There are a couple ways to know this, though. Okay, so the easiest way, the simplest way, the most basic, is go just dig a hole in your landscape, dig a few holes maybe, get some of the soil, get it wet, and start squeezing it in your hand. Okay. If it sticks and becomes like something you want to like cast a pot out of, you've got more clay soil, right? You need to run it through your fingers and it kind of comes out like a worm. Okay. If you have more sandy soil, it'll just kind of crumble. Even when you've squeezed it really good, it'll just kind of crumble in your hand. And so that now you've got more sandy soils. Okay. So you can figure out that. And if you're clay or sand, that's usually good enough to really kind of get you started. Now, if you want to know for sure, there's actually a really easy way to do this. Do the same thing with your holes. Get some soil, put it into a bucket, look up USUAL. This is usual. And this is Utah State University's analytics lab. And for something like $20, you can send it in and they'll give you some information on how much fertilizer you may need to put in the area. They'll tell you what your pH is. They'll tell you what your soil type is, which is what we're talking about here. It's a lot of good information for a very little amount of money. And I would highly encourage anybody tackling a project where they're going to change out some irrigation to know their soil type and to get that soil test from Utah State. It is inexpensive and very accurate. So
a soil test is a great place to start for so many reasons. For that alone, but also when people say, oh, I need to fertilize. Well, do you really?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to say the same thing about fertilizing that I said about water. Yeah. We don't fertilize plants. We fertilize soil, right? Plants go into the soil and they pull out the nutrients that they need. And that's what they do. Okay. So we need to figure out what nutrients are missing from the soil and then replace that. Okay. Now with nitrogen, they are taking it kind of their best guess based on what you're planting in the area, because we can't really test for nitrogen, but they go, okay, since this is what you're planting, we recommend this much nitrogen. And it really is a bit of a guess because nitrogen gets used out of the soil so fast. But things like potassium and phosphorus, like those are in the soil. Those are easily to test for. And so if you're using like a 10-10-10 fertilizer, right? So NPK, right? If you're using something with all three numbers and your soil test says you don't need phosphorus or potassium, you're kind of recreational fertilization now. It's probably not helping your plant. More phosphorus, more potassium, more nitrogen won't make your plant uptake it any more than it needs. It just simply uptakes what it needs and doesn't touch the rest. Okay, so know what you need for sure, and that soil test will actually tell you that. It'll give you a good test or a good indication of what you might need of nitrogen based on the plants you tell them that you're planning on planting in that area. But it will tell you how much potassium, how much phosphorus you have, and that'll give you a really good idea of what to replace. And so I would highly encourage getting that test so you know what to replace. And that is really like that is the best way to fertilize. We, as a generality, over fertilize in this country. We over fertilize a lot.
Yes.
And we don't need to do it. We don't need to be washing that, that deep in the soil. And, so out here, and I can tell you what I've done in the past is I do a soil test every few years. And then I just use those results for a couple of years and I test it again to see kind of where we're at. Usually go on the very lowest end of the nitrogen cycle, the nitrogen recommendations, because we have a ton of compost out here, and compost can actually replace a lot of that nutrients that you need, a lot of the nitrogen that you need. So I'll do low on the nitrogen, and we rarely ever need potassium or phosphorus. Rarely. Okay. It's happened once in my 14 plus years here. So we had to put a little bit down and then haven't had to do it again in many years. So plants just don't use it to the level they use nitrogen. So, but yeah, I would definitely recommend knowing what to put in before you break out a bag of fertilizer. That soil test is really valuable. So
yes, it really is. And I really want to encourage listeners to get away from the habit of, I see this on the Utah Gardeners Facebook page a lot, where the question will be, oh, look, my plant doesn't look right. How much fertilizer should I add? Fertilizer isn't medicine.
No. And I know, I'm also on that Utah Facebook page that you're there. And people ask the question all the time, or I planted roses. What fertilizer should I plant for my roses? And it really is the wrong question. The question is, what is my soil missing? And the soil test is really the best way to know that. So, because really the rose, it's whether it's a rose, whether it's a vegetable garden, no matter what the plant is, a tree, they're all going to use the same nutrients, just a little differently. But it's the same nutrients. It really is the same stuff. There is no witchcraft or voodoo medicine or in those bags of fertilizer that say rose fertilizer on it. It's not special stuff. It is just NPK in some form or another. So yeah, it's you're overthinking it if you're trying to figure out what specific food your plant needs. So
these marketers confuse everyone and has everybody fooled, right?
They absolutely do. So plants are tougher, hardier, stronger, and way more resilient than I think people generally give them credit for. So
it's true.
I get volunteers that'll come out and they'll see how kind of rough I am with some of the plants, and I'm like, trust me, it'll be fine. So.
Well, and there's a reason that, the most beautiful flower you ever get is growing in the crack of your cement.
Yeah, sometimes.
Right? But it's like, how is this happening? I didn't do anything to it. And that's usually the reason why it's doing so well.
Yeah, it picked that area because it liked it. And so it's going to grow there, no matter what you feel about this. So, yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So let's jump into some myths, because I remember you're the person at one of my previous episodes that made me realize, or I think one of the first people that I learned from, that landscape fabric is literally the devil.
It is. Satan itself. Yeah.
I have been preaching and singing that song ever since, because I always just thought maybe, it's just not working on my property because I did something wrong. Yep. Not just because this is actually terrible and you shouldn't use it. Right.
Yeah. And that's actually a story I've heard from many people. In fact, I wrote one of my first articles that got published in the old Spaces section of the Tribune was a rant about landscape fabric. And I had family members go, I just thought I was using it wrong. So I was putting it in, and then it worked for a little bit, and then the weeds came back, and so I put more in. And so I'm like, well, how many layers of this stuff do you have? And they're like 4. And I'm like, okay, so after 4 layers, you still think you're the one doing this wrong. Yeah. Landscape fabric doesn't even, okay. So here's the promise of landscape fabric. Everybody out there listening is heard this promise. Put this layer of cloth down, or this felt, or whatever it's made out of. And the weed seeds don't have anywhere to go. They can't grow up. Okay. And then you put the mulch on top and, cut holes for your plants, and you're kind of good to go. Right now, this probably does work for about 6 or 7 months. And it does a pretty good job. So just long enough for contractors to finish your job and move on, if you should never see them again, or the people who sold it to you. Here's the first problem we get. is plants will outgrow those holes pretty quickly, and perennial plants will outgrow them and then start growing on top of the weed fabric, and be stunted. And then you come out and you have to remove the weed fabric and you realize you're taking out half the plant because all it's in the ground actually is just in that little tiny hole. And it's even more devastating for a tree. I've seen too many trees literally just strangled out because nobody made the hole bigger as it got bigger. You would have to, because that weed fabric is easily strong enough to just actually strangle a tree, and kill that thing dead. So landscape fabric is one of the worst things I think you can put in. But here's the things, like it doesn't really allow much airflow down into the soil. And while air and water does get through it really restricts it pretty heavily. So even the water doesn't go down there quite as well, even though it does pass through it. So you're limiting water, you're limiting air, and trees need air and water to live. And what I've seen tree roots doing underneath landscape fabric is they're 2 inches from the surface and they never really go down very far. Tree roots don't go down much more than 2 or 3 feet anyway, but they shouldn't be living in the top 6 inches because they can't breathe.
Right.
And that's exactly what I've seen. Or I've seen them actually growing up over the landscape fabric, and now you can't even remove it entirely because it's really bound up in that. In fact, that situation exists here at the garden, because back when it got installed back in the early days, that was still something that we didn't know yet.
Right.
Or at least the people who put in the garden didn't realize. And so I've been pulling out of this garden my entire time here. There are some that will never come out because it's too bound up in the roots of the crown of a tree or a shrub, and it's never going to come out of there. But it compacts the soil, it restricts air, it restricts water. I've seen it completely strangle out trees. And to boot, doesn't keep the weeds down. Like, it doesn't even do the one job it promised it would do.
Yeah.
So we can't even have this discussion of it does all these bad things, but here's the good thing that it does, because it doesn't actually do that one good thing. So, landscape fabric would be the one thing that just, like, I wish everywhere would just stop carrying it. Now,
stop selling it.
Yeah,
I saw it at Costco and I was like, no.
It's great for underneath your patio, underneath your hardscape path as a soil stabilizer. But yeah, underneath where plants are going, nah.
Yeah.
There's few things that are as bad as that over the long term. So
yes. So you do think, though, so as far as uses for it, where it does have a valid use, you do think that it's okay to put it under a hardscape path. For example, if you're putting down road base and then like a chat path on top.
Yeah, absolutely. It keeps the gravel from like embedding into the soil. It keeps it from sinking a lot. So yeah, it absolutely is legitimate under a gravel path, under a flagstone path, under like some sort of patio that you're installing. Yeah, absolutely. It's good for like I've seen it on the other side of rocks, that they do a rock wall, and that helps keep the soil from like moving in between the rocks and disappearing. So yeah, it's got its uses. It's just not, for not for your planting plants around it.
Yes.
And if you're going to cut a hole and put a plant in that's actually where it's gotten wrong. It's don't do that now.
Yes.
A good thick layer of mulch, way better.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so selfish personal question.
Yes.
I am putting in I'm local scaping essentially, a half acre of my yard, and there's a lot of pathways. And unfortunately, we did already install a lot of the road base, and we have not yet ordered the chat, but I've noticed already this year these milkweed plants are growing up underneath the very compacted road base. I mean, we've compacted this road base 3 times over. It's at least 2 to 3 inches thick. I'm in shock that I've got milkweed growing up, like it's literally moved it. And so I'm realizing, oh man, we probably didn't put landscape fabric underneath I actually am not certain if they did or not. But either way, what would you do? Would you just dig it out?
Yeah, and that's not as hard as it sounds, I think, because even your road base can't be more than 3 or 4 inches deep, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, if you kind of just dug it down in sections and just put it down there, it would help quite a bit in that situation. So, and here's a situation where something is coming up through several inches of a road base, but we still think like, this is a winnable war against weeds with a piece of fabric on it. Anyway.
Isn't that the truth?
So, I mean, I
Yeah.
once saw a concrete path, not a concrete path, an asphalt path. A bindweed had managed to push its way through it. I'm like, I don't know. I give up now.
Oh my word. Oh, let's not even start on bindweed, although we
So,
can.
yeah, bindweed. No, if you have a problem with bindweed, yeah, just let me give you permission to understand that it's about as hard to take care of as anything. So don't feel bad. Nobody can take care of bindweed. It's a management issue, not a eradication issue. You can't actually get rid of it. So
Yeah, you really can't. It's impossible. Just like Horicress or white
yeah,
top.
white top. Yeah, in fact, those plants belong in the same category because they are both what we call creeping perennials.
Yes.
They are deep roots and spread by rhizomes and spread aggressively. So
Well,
yeah,
actually, those are the three things I have trouble with on my property, which coincidentally is right up against the Jordan River.
that's I guess probably the give and take of living that close to the Jordan River. It's probably beautiful at times, but that's the drawback on it.
Yes, you're right. And it is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. But there are several drawbacks, as well as having geese every single night. Quack, quack. I mean, they are so loud, even though I love nature and they're have just as much right to be here as I do. So I don't get fussy about it at all, but it is loud and they do shit all over my grass.
Nice.
I mean, everywhere. It's bad. It's almost like having a dog because I have to go out and I do put it in my compost pile. Not that I use for my
Great
vegetable garden.
compost. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just put it in
Great compost.
my compost like area that I use for flowers. But
It wouldn't be bad on your. It wouldn't actually be that bad on your vegetable
vegetable,
garden. Yeah,
really?
I mean, yeah, it actually wouldn't be that bad. It's you wouldn't want to put like dog feces or cat feces there in your vegetable garden, but goose, chicken, things like that's actually not bad. There's a lot of
Yeah,
fertilizers that are actually made that way.
that's true. I just remembering another thing you said from a past episode that your favorite perennial. Well,
Yeah.
actually, okay, I know what it was because I remember very clearly
Right.
because I bought one because of you.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you again and see if it's the same thing.
Oh, it'll be the same. Yeah, there's no question. Yeah, no, I love Ethiopeonies. Like
Okay,
I,
you got it. That's
I'm a massive fan. I'm a big fan of Ethiopeonies. And for those, I mean, peonies are great, but Ethiopeonies are a hybrid between the herbaceous peonies everybody's familiar with and a tree peony. Okay, so what you get is a semi-woody, short perennial that holds itself up way better than your traditional old peonies can, and with tree peony flowers, which are usually huge, and they come in colors that are just something unlike unlike some of the others. It is a beautiful plant. I'm doing my own local scape in my own yard because I just moved into a new house a couple of years ago, and I've got 5 or 6 of them that I'm going to put in. So.
See, that was going to be my next question for you is here you are, at the Conservation Garden Park with all this assortment of everything beautiful that can possibly grow in Utah. And so the question is, what is Mike going to actually put in his yard?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we can talk like that. And I know this answer because I've been plant shopping for a few weeks now
Okay.
to get all my stuff. So yeah, let me give you a basic list of stuff. I wish I had my list handy, but I can give you a really decent rundown because again I bought all these plants. So I've got things like redbirds in a tree. So redbirds in a tree. I've got geums.
Yes.
And I'm now looking for the list that I made because I just made a list recently. So I've got some geums. I've got so a lot of these come from High Country Gardens in combination with Plant Select as well. So anybody doesn't know Plant Select, go for sure. Go look up Plant Select. Anyway, so I've got the redbirds on the tree. I've got the geums. I have got some Arenaria, which I forgot the thrift the name on that. I've got Ethiopeonies. I have quite a few actually. That's going to be a big cluster. I've got some Baptisia, which in this case I picked out the pink, what they call pink lemonade ones, which are kind of yellow purple look. Should be really pretty. I did pick up some Korean feather reed grass, which is a beautiful Calamagrostis. So the Calamagrostis, I think most people are familiar with, are the Carl Foresters. Yep. These are related, but they don't look like that. They're much better looking. And actually the this I'm gonna get sappy here for just a moment.
Do it.
The feathered grass I picked out, the cultivar name from Plant Select, or not from Plant Select, from High Country Gardens, is called Caspian. Okay.
Okay.
And this is special to me because I had a dog for the last 15 years named Caspian who died a couple of years ago. And so when I saw the plant, I'm like, well, that's perfect. I'll have that. And so my other dog she's old. She's not past, but she's really old at this point and probably doesn't have a lot of years left. If not, I mean, sometime in the next year or so, because I mean, she's 15 years old. She very clearly shows her age. But anyway, one of the other plants I bought was a daylily that is called Lady Georgia. For Georgia. So Caspian and Georgia are going to be represented in my yard next to each other in my design. So
that is so sweet.
Anyway, I'm planting a couple of barberries. These are called Sunjoy. I liked the color of the leaves on them. So they should make a nice background for it. Let's see,
I'm sitting here Googling everything that you're mentioning.
I've got several types of salvias of various colors.
Yep.
I've got an indigo blue dragon head, which I think is a Plant Select product. I've got the past flower, the pulsatillas that I'm going to be putting in. Now, if you're thinking, wait a minute, this sounds a lot for 1 yard. Yep, you're right. I've got some really small butterfly bushes. These are not the normal like 6 or 7 feet tall ones. These are more like the 2 feet tall ones.
Oh yes.
I'm gonna put in there. I've got some Ascot rainbow spurge. I found my list, if you haven't noticed.
Yeah.
So I've got quite a few different echinaceas, flowers that'll be going in, of several different colors. I tend to buy like 3 or 5 of say an echinacea, but they all might be different colors. Because I do instead of like having a cluster of colors, I do tend to like the plant looks the same, but the flowers are different color, and I kind of like that effect.
Yeah.
I bought some Big Bettany, which is a type of stackies. I've got some upright Speedwell and some Maltese cross. Anyway,
Gorgeous.
So I've got so many. I ordered a ton of plants from High Country Gardens.
Yep.
That are mostly Plant Select plants, and things that grow really well out here. So.
Amazing.
A lot of which we have here, although a lot of what I'm planting at my house is something we grow here, but is a different cultivar of that plant. So just get a little different than what I get out here. So, but yeah. So there's a kind of a basic rundown of a bunch of stuff that I'm planting in my yard. So along with some crab apples. So.
Oh gosh, yes.
I'm a big fan of crab apples.
Me too. I did buy a couple weeping ones from Cameron, so I'm just gonna have this rotating timer clock every spring of all these different crab apples that I just love.
Yeah, I've got a similar situation that is currently on my plan where I'm going to plant, I think, 5 different crabs. They're going to be slightly different heights and shapes and bloom colors. So I should have an area of crab apples that should be pinks and reds and deep reds and pink and white. So. And all these are slightly different size. So anyway, that's the same effect I do with like the echinaceas and a few other things. It's the same plant, different bloom, but when it's green, it just kind of all looks like the same thing. Anyway, I do that with daylilies and some other stuff, which I planted a bunch of daylilies as well. Well, am planting. I haven't planted a bunch yet. These are mostly on my plan or sitting in my yard because I purchased them waiting to like finish my drip. I'm running the drip right now. So.
Gotcha. So. That's exactly what we're doing. That's the exact step I'm at, is they're working on the drip right now. All right. So in your opinion, very expert opinion, what is one underrated or overrated plant or tree that people in Utah need to know more or less about?
And you're laughing because you know the answer. So very recently, we got contacted by the Tribune's op-ed department asking for an op-ed on the flowering pear tree. my gut says most people who are listening to the show get that the flowering pear is bad, but honestly, I run into people who just love that tree so much. So,
Yes.
and yet I really feel like we should never plant ever again. Well, that's not entirely true. Like as a specimen tree in your backyard, I think they're fine. Mass planting of these trees is awful. So there is an op-ed in the Tribune if anyone wants to read my real thoughts on the subject. But yeah, they're terrible trees. They grow too fast. They become really weak. They fall down in even moderate winds or moderate snow loads. They are susceptible to all kinds of diseases. And once they get sick, it's, they get everything else sick that's near them, because what's near them is a bunch of other flowering pears usually. But they also get your service berries sick or your roses sick because they've got it, because that fire blight that they get is actually transmissible to everything else in the rose family, including pears and apples and roses and service berries and all these other things that are in the rose family. So it's just a good way to keep that pathogen around and infecting all these plants that we do love. So and they, I know they grow fast, but that's actually part of their problem. The blooms are great. Like when they're in full bloom, I get why people love them. When they're in fall color, I get why people love them.
True.
But that bloom is followed by a scent that nobody likes, or that everybody has some sort of rude, analogy to.
Yep.
And I mean, I really would love it if we just phase these things out and just stop planting them. But one of the points I make in the op-ed, then I'll make it here, is we can't do what we've been doing. We can't go out and find the one perfect tree that we're going to plant everywhere and do that, because that's actually the problem. Flowering pear is not the problem. The fact that we planted them everywhere is the problem. We did this 100 or so years ago with elms, and they got Dutch elm disease, which caused rampant die-off of these. And we replaced a lot of those with ash trees, which are now the emerald ash tree borer is devastating across the country. It hasn't reached here yet, but it's only a matter of time. And so we can't keep doing this, and we can't keep mass planting of this one perfect plant that we all love. We have to diversify it. Our urban forests have to be diversified. And at the genus level, we just have to continue to just plant lots of different plants and kind of give up on this idea that like we should have one tree and it should be everywhere. And because that's actually the problem, not the flowering pear, per se. Okay.
So what is one thing that you think every gardener in Utah should know?
So this is a big one, is when you're designing your landscape or thinking about it, make sure you look at the plants and make sure you look at its mature size. And put the appropriate plants in the appropriate spots. I think I see way too often large trees planted next to houses because somebody wasn't realizing that thing's got a 20-foot spread on it. And so it can't go 2 feet from the house, things like this. So if there's one thing I think people really need to think about is look at the mature size of that plant and really account for it. I think one of the things people think they can do, and I think people rarely do, is they think they can prune something to keep it a smaller size. And I think it's not fun for anyone to do that, and I don't like it, and I can do it, but I would rather never plant a tree that I have to maintain that way, because you lose that battle eventually, and if you miss it a couple years, you've lost the battle at that point. So look at the mature size of your trees. Make sure you're planting them. When you first plant trees and things, they'll look really far apart. Let them grow in. Just give it the time. So
that's right, because the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. And The reality is, I'm working with that right now, where I am planting trees and I think, oh, they're so far apart. But just for now, throw in some perennials, some daylilies and something in between, and you're good, right?
It'll grow in eventually.
That's right. The years go by quickly, and then all of a sudden you've got this mature landscape. And always plan for the future down the road is best. I really appreciate that advice, and I think it's going to be fun, because what I'm going to do I think the last episode of the year is going to be every expert's advice on the show in one episode. So I think that'll be kind of fun.
That will be fun.
Yes. Well, Mike, for the listeners, I'll put all the interesting links that we've talked about in the episode notes. And thank you so much for being on the show today, Mike.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad you're back. This was fun. I was really happy to see the show was back on.
fantastic. Well, that's it for today's episode of Gardening Utah. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Mike from Conservation Garden Park. I know I always learn something new every time we talk. Now, if you found today's episode helpful, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow plant lover. And don't miss our next episode. I will be joined by Sheridan Hansen. We will be diving into another round of expert advice that you can use in your yard and garden right away. Until then, happy gardening, and remember, grow big or go home.